Hey guys, tonight we are going to build a road. Not just any road, mind you. We're going to build one of the straightest, most durable, most stubbornly permanent roads the world has ever seen. We're going to build a Roman road. Imagine for a moment that you are there. The air is cool and damp in this northern province of the Roman Empire, smelling of wood smoke, wet earth, and the faint, ever-present aroma of baking bread from the camp ovens. You're a junior military engineer, a surveyor, and you've just been summoned to the commander's office. Spoiler alert, the dental plan is non-existent, and the biggest perk is not getting immediately decimated by a local tribe whose sacred grove you just paved over. The odds aren't great. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always nice to know who is drifting off with me, so feel free to post your location in the comments and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The room is small, functional, and smells of beeswax, old papyrus, and the faint metallic scent of oiled leather from your commander's armor stand in the corner. You are standing before the desk of Gaius Livius Drusus, the Legion's chief engineer, a man whose face looks like it was carved from a block of granite and then left out in the rain for 40 years. He doesn't look up. He is studying a map, his finger tracing a line through a vast green, unlabeled space marked simply Germania Superior. The silence in the room is heavy, broken only by the distant, rhythmic thud of legionaries training in the fortress courtyard. You can hear the bark of a centurion, faint and muffled by the stone walls. You stand perfectly still, trying to control your breathing. You've only been with the Legion for 6 months, and a summons like this usually means you've either done something very right or something catastrophically wrong. A heavy wooden door creaks open behind you, and an imperial courier enters. He's caked in mud from the road, his leather tunic stained dark with sweat, but he carries himself with an air of profound importance. In his hand is a sealed cylindrical case of polished wood, bearing the unmistakable eagle insignia of the emperor himself. This is not a routine supply request. The courier hands the case to Drusus, salutes sharply, and leaves without a word. The heavy door thuds shut, and the silence returns, now charged with a new kind of tension. Drusus places the cylinder on his desk. With a small, sharp knife, he carefully cuts the wax seal, a deep imperial purple, stamped with the profile of the Emperor Trajan. The soft crackle of the breaking wax is the loudest sound you've ever heard. He pulls out a rolled papyrus scroll, its edges slightly frayed from the journey. This isn't just paper, it's a direct command, an extension of the Emperor's will, carried hundreds of miles to this damp, gray frontier town. The ink used for these official decrees was a carefully guarded recipe of carbon black, gum arabic, and water, designed not to fade. A silent testament to the permanence of the words it formed. Drusus unrolls it slowly, the papyrus making a dry, whispering sound against the wood of the desk. He begins to read, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. It's not a request, it's an order. By the sacred authority of Imperator Caesar Nerva Trajanus Augustus, a new military road, a via militaris, is to be constructed. It will begin here at the fortress of Mogontiacum and drive northeast 100 Roman miles into the territory of the Chatti tribe. It is to be straight. It is to be wide enough for 2 marching columns. And it is to be completed before the winter snows make the ground unworkable. A project of this scale, in hostile territory, on that kind of a timeline, it's a monumental undertaking. This isn't about making trade easier for local merchants. Mainstream history confirms that the primary purpose of these incredible feats of engineering was always the army. A Roman road was a declaration, a tool of conquest and control. It allowed legions to move faster, supplies to be secured, and Roman power to be projected deep into lands that had never before felt the hobnailed sandal of a legionary. It was a dagger pointed at the heart of the wilderness. You look at the map on his desk again. That empty green space now seems menacing. Historians still argue whether these great roads pushing into barbarian lands were purely defensive, creating secure borders, or if they were deliberately provocative, a way of forcing a confrontation and justifying further conquest. Looking at Druce's grim expression, you suspect it's a bit of both. He finally looks up from the scroll and meets your eyes. "You, junior surveyor," he grunts, "are assigned to the initial reconnaissance team. You will be on the crew of Ugerman Sores, the land measurers. You will help plot the course." He rolls the papyrus back up, the sound seeming to seal your fate. The weight of the command settles in your stomach like a cold, heavy stone. This isn't an abstract concept from a textbook anymore. This is your life for the foreseeable future. You, a handful of other engineers, and a cohort of legionaries are about to walk into a dark, dense forest full of people who very much want you to go home, and you're going to try and draw a perfectly straight line through it. Your first thought isn't of the glory of Rome or the genius of the emperor. It's a much more practical and slightly panicked thought. You hope you brought your warmest cloak. Drusus dismisses you with a curt nod. Go. Report to Marcus Vettius in the engineer's quarters. He is your mensor, your senior surveyor. Do not disappoint him. His temper is shorter than his plumb line. You give a quick, formal salute, your palm flat and facing him, and back out of the room, the heavy door closing with a soft whoosh and a solid thud. You are back in the stone corridor, the weight of the Emperor's command still buzzing in your ears. The distant sounds of the fortress, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the rumble of a cart on the cobblestones, the shouted Latin commands, all seem slightly muted, as if you're hearing them from underwater. You have a new boss, and a new, seemingly impossible job. You make your way across the bustling courtyard towards the Fabrica, the workshop area of the fortress. This is the heart of the Legion's logistical and engineering might. Here you see carpenters shaping wood for new barracks, blacksmiths repairing shields, and leatherworkers mending sandals. But you head for a quieter, more secluded building at the edge of the complex. This is the home of the agrimensores, the land measurers. Inside, the air smells of linseed oil, dry wood, and the faint metallic tang of polished bronze. It's a space of quiet concentration, a stark contrast to the noisy industry outside. Maps are laid out on wide tables, weighted down at the corners with smooth river stones. Tools you barely recognize hang from pegs on the walls. A man is standing over one of the tables, squinting at a diagram. He is not tall, but he is built like a stone wall. His face is a roadmap of old campaigns, deeply tanned and creased around the eyes. His arms are thick with muscle, and his hands, though stained with ink, look like they could crush rock. This must be Marcus Vettius. He looks up as you approach, his gray eyes assessing you in a single sweeping glance that makes you feel utterly transparent. You introduce yourself, your voice sounding a little too thin in the quiet room. He just grunts in response. Drusus sent you. Good. We need another pair of eyes and a strong back. Mostly the back. His humor is as dry as old sawdust. He turns from the table and walks you over to a rack of strange-looking equipment. This, he says, pointing to a long wooden pole, is a desempeda, a 10-footer. It is your best friend. It is exactly 10 Roman feet long. No more, no less. It does not lie. It does not complain. Learn to love it. Then he points to a collection of much taller, thinner poles, some painted with alternating bands of red and white. Sighting rods. You will spend many, many hours staring at these until your eyes water. Then he picks up something that looks like a modern carpenter's level, but much longer and more elaborate. It's a long wooden plank with a groove cut into the top and plumb lines at either end. A chorobates, he says, for finding a true horizontal line. The groove is for water. If the water is still, the line is level. Simple, reliable. Finally, he moves to a tall, slender object wrapped in a leather case. He carefully unwraps it and assembles it with a practiced economy of motion. It looks like a bizarre piece of abstract sculpture. A vertical staff, sharpened at the bottom to stick in the ground, is topped by a horizontal wooden cross that can pivot. From the end of each of the 4 arms of the cross hangs a thin, strong cord, each with a pear-shaped weight of solid bronze at its end. This, he says, with a tone that borders on reverence, is the groma. This is how we will draw a straight line through that entire cursed forest. This is the iconic tool of the Roman surveyor, the simple yet brilliant device responsible for the legendary straightness of their roads. You've studied diagrams of it, of course, but seeing it in person is different. It seems fragile, almost flimsy, like a child's toy. Vettius sees the doubt in your eyes. It looks simple, doesn't it? It is, and that's why it works. It doesn't have 100 delicate parts to break. It only cares about one thing: gravity. He explains how it works. You plant the staff in the ground and pivot the cross arms until they point in the desired direction. Then you wait for the 4 plumb bobs, the perpendicula, to hang perfectly still. By sighting along 2 of the plumb lines, you can project a perfectly straight line forward. By sighting from a side arm across the central pivot to the opposite arm, you get a perfect 90-degree angle. It allows you to create the grid upon which the entire Roman world is built, from military camps to entire cities. He lets you handle one of the bronze plumb bobs. It's surprisingly heavy, cool and smooth in your palm. It's a matter of some academic discussion just how the Romans managed to maintain such accuracy over dozens, even hundreds of miles with such a simple device. They likely used a system of signal fires or smoke signals on high ground, with surveyors leapfrogging each other. But the core of the work, the short distance sighting, all came down to this strange wooden cross and 4 pieces of string. Your turn, Vettius says, gesturing for you to take over. You try to mimic his smooth movements, but you feel clumsy and awkward. You set the staff, but it's not perfectly vertical. You try to align the cross arms, and your hand bumps one of the plumb lines, sending it swinging in a wild arc. Vettius sighs, a long, suffering sound. Try not to break the most important piece of surveying equipment on the northern frontier on your first day, boy. It's bad for morale. You steady your hands and try again, focusing, blocking out everything but the tool. You squint, lining up the near string with the far string, and through them you see one of the red and white sighting rods at the far end of the workshop. For a single fleeting moment, they all align perfectly. You see it, the straight line. It's a small victory, but it feels profound. You are looking down the ghost of a road that does not yet exist, a path of order you will impose upon a world of chaos, and all you needed was a stick, a cross, and a bit of string. The following morning, well before dawn, you are jolted awake by the harsh blast of a horn. This is the bucina, the legionary's alarm clock, and it is brutally effective. You pull on your thick woolen tunic and leather breeches in the cold, damp air of the barracks, the flickering lamplight casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the fortress is already a hive of activity. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke from the cook fires and the earthy scent of the pack mules being loaded for the day's work. You join the other engineers in the mess hall for a quick, functional breakfast of pulse, a thick porridge made from spelt wheat, which is about as exciting as eating wet sand. No one talks much. The weight of the task ahead seems to have settled over everyone. Your team consists of Vettius, yourself, another junior surveyor named Lucius, who looks even more nervous than you do, and a 10-man security detail of legionaries, their chainmail shirts clinking softly as they walk. They are led by a grim-faced decution named Crixus, a man who looks like he flosses with iron wire. Vettius carries the precious groma himself, while you and Lucius are loaded down with the sighting rods, the 10-foot decampita, and a heavy mallet for pounding stakes into the ground. As you march out of the main gate of the fortress, the first hints of dawn are painting the eastern sky a pale, watery gray. The road you were leaving behind is a masterpiece, wide, paved, with deep drainage ditches on either side. The road you are about to create is nothing but trees, hills, and fog. You march for an hour, following a rough track that eventually peters out into a deer trail. The dense forest closes in around you. The air grows still and heavy. The only sounds the crunch of your hobnailed sandals on the damp earth and the occasional call of a bird. Crixus and his men are on high alert, their hands never far from the hilts of their gladius swords. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the undergrowth makes your heart jump. This is chatty territory. While there's no open war at the moment, the local tribes are known to be fiercely independent and deeply resentful of Roman expansion. A small, isolated survey team like yours is a tempting target. It's a strange and unsettling thought that a single well-aimed arrow from a hidden archer could end this grand imperial project before the first shovelful of dirt is even turned. Vettius finally calls a halt on a small rocky hillock that offers a relatively clear view of the surrounding landscape. "Here," he says, pointing northeast with his chin. "This is our starting point. From here we sight the line." He unwraps the groma and carefully plants it in the ground, his movements precise and unhurried. He doesn't seem bothered by the oppressive silence or the unseen eyes that you feel watching you from the trees. He is a man with a job to do, and the rest of the world is just a distraction. While he adjusts the groma, he sends you and Lucius out with the sighting rods. Your job is to move ahead in the intended direction of the road, find a high point, and set up a signal. You and Lucius, escorted by 2 of the legionaries, trudge through the dense undergrowth for what feels like miles. You finally reach the crest of the next major hill. Looking back, you can just make out the tiny figures of Vettius and his team on the first hillock. Vettius has already lit a small, controlled fire. Now, It's your turn. You gather dry wood and damp leaves. This is the clever, low-tech solution to long-distance surveying. You will use smoke signals. Mainstream historical sources often focus on the impressive final product of the roads, but they rarely detail the sheer grit and ingenuity required in this initial phase. There were no satellites, no laser levels, just men with sharp eyes and a deep understanding of basic geometry. You build your own fire, and once it's burning well, you start piling on the green leaves. A thick column of white smoke begins to rise, straight up into the still morning air. Now comes the painstaking part. Back on his hill, Vedius is sighting with the Groma. Using hand signals relayed by one of the legionaries, he directs you. A wave to the left means move the smoke source left. A wave to the right means move it right. It's a slow, tedious process. You shift the smoldering pile of leaves a few feet, wait for the smoke column to stabilize, and then look back for the next signal. This goes on for the better part of an hour. Move left. No, too far. A little to the right. Hold it. Hold it. Perfect. Vedius gives the signal for hold position. You have found the line. You drive a tall red and white sighting rod deep into the earth at that precise spot. That pole now represents a single, perfect point on a straight line stretching back to the Groma. This is how it's done. One sighting at a time, you will leapfrog your way through this wilderness, leaving a trail of marker poles in your wake. Historians still argue about the exact methods used to navigate major obstacles like mountains or vast swamps. Some suggest they made small, almost imperceptible dog legs, while others believe they employed more advanced geometric calculations to triangulate around the obstacle and resume the same line on the other side. A quirky detail that is often overlooked is the use of sighting trenches. In flatter terrain with no hills for signals, surveyors would sometimes dig a shallow trench a few hundred feet long, a sulcus, to serve as a physical guide for the eye, ensuring the next survey point stayed true. For you, standing on this hill, covered in sweat and smoke, all you know is that you've just helped draw a 1 mile long invisible line. And tomorrow, you'll do it again, and again, and again. For the next several weeks, your life falls into a grueling, monotonous rhythm. Wake before dawn, eat the bland porridge, and march into the forest. You, Vedius, and Lucius move ahead, a small, vulnerable island of Roman order in a sea of tangled wilderness, leaving a trail of brightly colored poles in your wake. Crixus and his men patrol your perimeter, their constant vigilance a low hum of tension beneath the surface of the daily work. Every day is the same slow, painstaking process of sighting and marking, sighting and marking. The straight line of poles you are leaving behind is a strange and unnatural sight, a stark geometric scar against the chaotic beauty of the primeval forest. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the first stage is complete. You have plotted the course for the first 20-mile section of the Via Militaris. Now the real work begins, and with it the real army arrives. One morning, the familiar quiet of the forest is shattered by a new sound, the rhythmic tramp of thousands of hobnailed sandals and the rumble of heavy wagons. The main body of the engineering corps and a full cohort of legionary muscle, nearly 500 men, march up to your forward camp. The forest, which had seemed so vast and empty, now feels crowded and loud. A temporary fortified camp is erected with terrifying speed and efficiency, complete with a defensive ditch and a wooden palisade. This will be your home for the next phase of the project, clearing the land. Your role now shifts from surveyor to supervisor. Vettius assigns you a century of legionaries, 80 men, and a specific 1-mile stretch of the plotted course. Your job is to oversee the defaunation and deplantation, the clearing of animals and plants. It sounds simple. It is anything but. You stand at the beginning of your section, looking at the line of sighting poles disappearing into a wall of thick ancient trees. Some of the oaks are so wide that 3 men holding hands couldn't circle them. This entire forest has to go. The standard width for a major Roman road was about 20 feet for the paved surface, but the clearing itself had to be much, much wider. The final cleared roadway, from drainage ditch to drainage ditch, would often be 80 feet across, and on major military routes, the legions would clear the trees back for 100 yards or more on either side. This created a wide open corridor that was easy to defend. It prevented ambushes, ensuring that no enemy force could hide in the trees and rain down arrows on a marching column. The work is brutal and relentless. The air fills with the rhythmic chop, chop, chop of hundreds of axes and the high-pitched whine of 2-man saws. The legionaries, men trained for battle, prove to be ruthlessly efficient lumberjacks. They work in teams, their movements synchronized. You hear the sharp crack and groan of a falling tree, followed by a ground-shaking thud every few minutes. It is a scene of organized destruction. You walk the line, shouting encouragement, pointing out the next tree to be felled, making sure the clearing stays true to the surveyor's marks. It's noisy, chaotic, and incredibly dangerous. A falling branch, a mistimed swing of an axe, disaster is always a moment away. Once the trees are down, the work is far from over. The massive stumps have to be removed. Some are burned, the fires smoldering for days, filling the air with a thick, acrid smoke. Others are dug out by hand and then hauled away by teams of sweating men and straining mules. It's a battle for every inch of ground. A quirky but essential part of this process was the complete removal of the topsoil. The Romans knew that soil containing roots, leaves, and other organic matter was unstable. It would rot, settle, and undermine the road's foundation. So they stripped it all away, down to the firm, virgin subsoil. This is one of the key reasons their roads were so durable. They weren't just paving over the landscape, they were excavating it, removing all its natural weaknesses before they even began to build. You watch as your century of men, their tunics soaked with sweat, their faces grim with determination, slowly but surely carves this enormous channel through the forest. Historians still debate the exact division of labor on these projects. While legionaries were certainly the primary workforce, it's likely that local auxiliary troops and even conscripted laborers from conquered tribes were used for the more menial tasks, especially in less hostile territory. Here, on the German frontier, it's all legionary muscle. They are soldiers, but they are also builders, lumberjacks, and earth movers. The Roman army was as much a construction company as it was a fighting force. One afternoon, a small group of tribesmen from the Chatti appear at the edge of the clearing. They don't look hostile, merely watchful. They stand silently, their arms crossed, observing the methodical destruction of their ancestral forest. Their presence is a stark reminder that you are an intruder here. This isn't an empty wilderness, it's someone's home. Crixus and his men form a loose line between them and your work crews, but the tribesmen make no move. They just watch, their faces unreadable. You can't help but feel a strange mix of pride in the raw power of your civilization and a quiet sense of unease at its sheer arrogance. You are literally changing the face of the world, imposing a ruler straight line of Roman order on a land that has known nothing but winding forest paths for millennia. After an hour, the tribesmen melt back into the woods as silently as they appeared, leaving you with the echo of their gaze and the unending sound of the axes. With the trees cleared and the topsoil scraped away, the true scale of the project is finally revealed. Before you lies a vast, raw wound in the earth, a wide, flat corridor of pale subsoil and exposed rock stretching to the horizon in a perfectly straight line. It looks like a giant has dragged a massive ruler across the landscape. The air, once filled with the sounds of chopping axes, now rings with the metallic clatter of pickaxes and the rhythmic scrape and thud of shovels. The next great stage has begun, digging the fossa, the great trench that will form the bed of the road. You walk your section, overseeing the work. The legionaries, who just a week ago were lumberjacks, are now expert excavators. They work in long, synchronized lines, their movements economical and efficient. This is the unglamorous, back-breaking heart of Roman road construction. The popular image is of men laying smooth paving stones, but the reality is that the majority of the work was digging, so much digging. The fossa was not a shallow ditch. For a major military road like this one, the trench would be dug down to solid bedrock if possible, or at least to a depth of 3 to 5 feet. All of this was done by hand, with iron-tipped shovels, pallus, pickaxes, delabras, and woven baskets to carry away the excavated earth. The sheer volume of soil and rock that needs to be moved is staggering. You watch the endless chain of men. One group digs, another fills the baskets, and a third carries the heavy loads to the sides of the clearing, where the earth is used to build up the road's shoulders or aggers. It's a human conveyor belt, powered by sweat, bread, and the harsh discipline of the centurions. You find yourself constantly measuring the depth and width of the trench with your descempeda, ensuring it meets the specifications laid out by Drusus. There is no room for error. A roadbed that is too shallow will not be stable. One that is not level will create weaknesses. One of the great historical facts about this process is its surprising complexity. The Romans didn't just dig a uniform trench. They were masters of drainage. In damp, marshy areas like this German frontier, they would often dig the central trench deeper than in drier regions. They understood that water was the great enemy of any road. If water seeped into the foundation, it could freeze in the winter, expand, and tear the entire structure apart from below. Therefore, the bottom of the fossa was often meticulously graded with a slight camber, sloping down from the center to the sides to ensure that any water that did penetrate the upper layers would be channeled away. You clamber down into the trench to inspect a section. The air is cool and smells of damp clay and stone. Looking up, you see the sky as a narrow strip of blue framed by the raw, earthen walls. Down here, the sounds of the work camp are muffled, replaced by the nearby grunts of the diggers and the scrape of their tools. It feels like being in the belly of some great beast. Vettius joins you, his critical eye scanning every detail. He points to a section of the trench floor. "Not level enough," he grunts. "Have them take another hand's width off the south side, and make sure they are tamping it down properly." He's referring to the process of compacting the subsoil at the very bottom of the trench. Before any foundation stones were laid, the floor of the fossa was pounded flat and hard by heavy wooden tamping beams, often wielded by 2 or 4 men. This created a solid, unyielding base for the layers to come. It was a tedious, exhausting job, but absolutely essential for the road's longevity. Historians still debate the precise tools used for this large-scale earth-moving. While shovels and baskets are well documented, some scholars suggest the Romans may have used a type of ox-drawn plow or scraper for the initial clearing and trenching in easier soils, though direct archaeological evidence for such a device is scarce. It's a reminder that for all we know about Roman engineering, there are still gaps in our understanding of their day-to-day techniques. As you stand in the trench, you notice something glinting in the clay wall. You reach out and work it loose. It's a piece of amber, the fossilized tree resin that was highly prized throughout the ancient world. A quirky fringe tidbit of trade history is that a major amber road ran through these German lands, connecting the Baltic Sea to the Mediterranean. For a moment, you hold this small golden piece of the old world in your hand, a world of winding trade paths and deep forests, right before you bury it forever beneath tons of Roman stone and concrete. You toss the amber aside and climb out of the trench, your mind returning to the task at hand. The sun is high in the sky, beating down on the hundreds of men toiling in the great ditch. From your vantage point, the sheer scale of the operation is almost overwhelming. It's a testament to the power of organized labor. No single person could achieve this, but an army, working as one, could literally move mountains of earth. The fossa is more than just a trench. It is the negative space of the road, its ghost, a void that will soon be filled with layers of carefully selected materials, each one playing a crucial role in creating a structure that will outlast the empire that built it. The great trench is finally dug, tamped, and graded to Vedius's exacting standards. A massive linear void now snakes through the landscape, awaiting the first of its many layers. This is a critical moment. The quality of the foundation will determine the longevity of the entire road. A mistake made here, at the very bottom, will be impossible to fix later. The pressure is immense, and the work becomes slower, more deliberate, and almost ceremonial in its precision. The era of brute force digging is over. The era of careful construction has begun. Your new task is to supervise the laying of the stodamen, the very first and most fundamental layer. The word itself means support or foundation, and that is exactly what it is. The materials for this layer have been accumulating for weeks. While the diggers were excavating the fossa, other work details were scouring the surrounding countryside for stone. Legionaries, acting as quarrymen, broke up rocky outcrops with iron wedges and heavy mallets. Carts, their wooden wheels groaning under the strain, have been hauling this material to the work site, creating enormous piles of rough, fist-sized to head-sized stones along the edge of the trench. You stand by one of these piles as a century of men begins the process. The work is methodical. Men clamber down into the trench, and a human chain is formed to pass the stones down, hand over hand. There is no dumping or chaotic filling. Each stone is placed, not thrown. Your job, walking the line, is to ensure the stones are packed together as tightly as possible. You point, you gesture, you shout instructions. Tighter! Over there! Fill that gap! The goal is to create a single interlocking layer of large stones with the minimum possible space between them. The legionaries use smaller stones and iron bars to wedge the larger rocks into place, eliminating any wobble or potential for shifting. This is the most well-known principle of Roman road building, their layered construction. The stodamen was the skeleton. Its primary purpose was to provide a stable, load-bearing base, but just as importantly, it was for drainage. The gaps between the stones, though minimized, created a porous layer that allowed any water seeping down from above to drain away, preventing the frost damage we talked about earlier. This layer would typically be about 10 inches to a foot deep, a solid bed of jagged, interlocking rock. It's hard, uncomfortable work. The stones are heavy and awkward, their sharp edges cutting into the soldiers' hands. You see men grunting with effort, their muscles straining as they hoist a particularly large rock into place. Vettius patrols the trench like a hawk, his eyes missing nothing. He carries a long iron rod, and he periodically plunges it down into the laid stone, testing for soft spots or areas that are not sufficiently compacted. If he finds a weakness, he doesn't just have the men fix it, he makes them pull up the entire 10-foot section and start again. His logic is brutal but effective. A single loose stone, he tells you, his voice low and serious, is like a disease. It will spread. The stones around it will loosen. The layer above will sink. In 5 years, a pothole will form. In 50, the road will fail. Do it right or do it twice. As you watch the men work, you are struck by the sheer pragmatism of it all. There is nothing elegant about the statumen. It's a layer of rough, ugly stone that will never be seen again once the road is complete. Yet it is arguably the most important part of the entire structure. This dedication to the unseen foundation is a hallmark of Roman engineering. They built things from the bedrock up, ensuring the parts no one would ever see were just as strong as the polished surface. Historians still marvel at the durability of these foundations, which is why so many modern roads in Europe are built directly on top of the original Roman alignments. The core structure is still sound after 2,000 years. A quirky but practical detail of this phase involved the use of local materials. The Romans were masters of adaptation. While the textbook road had specific layers, the engineers on the ground would use whatever was available. In rocky areas like this, the statumen was made of quarried stone, but in regions with less rock, they would use layers of logs, fired clay, or whatever hard, durable material they could find. There's even debate among archaeologists about whether they sometimes used a form of corduroy road, logs laid side by side, as a base in particularly marshy ground before building the stone layers on top. A cart arrives with a different kind of cargo, large clay amphorae filled with water. The day is warm and the work is thirsty, but the water is also for the road. Once a section of the statumen is complete, the men douse it with water. This helps to settle the smaller wedge stones and wash fine particles of dust and grit down into the remaining crevices, locking the entire layer together even more tightly. You watch as the water cascades over the gray stones, darkening them for a moment before disappearing into the deep foundation. It feels like a kind of baptism, a ritual marking the completion of the road's very soul. The work continues, foot by painstaking foot, the great trench slowly filling with its first solid, permanent layer of stone. The skeleton of the road is in place. The stamen forms a solid, jagged floor at the bottom of the trench, a testament to long days of heavy lifting and meticulous placement. Now it's time to add the next layer, to put some flesh on these bones. The air at the worksite changes. The sharp clang of stone on stone is replaced by a grating, scraping sound, and the air begins to fill with a fine, pale dust that coats everything and gets in your eyes and throat. You are now supervising the preparation and laying of the rudis. This second layer is a coarse aggregate, a mixture of smaller, broken materials designed to fill the larger gaps in the stamen below and create a dense, compacted subbase. The ingredients for the rudis are piled high along the road's edge. There are mountains of gravel, cartloads of broken pottery and tiles scavenged from the camp's waste pits, and shattered fragments of rock left over from the quarrying process. It's essentially a primitive form of heavy-duty concrete, but instead of sand and cement, it uses whatever small, hard materials are available. Your first task is to oversee the breakers. Squads of legionaries, often on light duty or those being punished for minor infractions, are set to work with heavy mallets. They sit on the ground amidst the piles of rubble, methodically smashing larger rocks and old roof tiles into pieces no bigger than a man's fist. It's monotonous, mind-numbing work. The constant percussive thwack, thwack, thwack of the mallets provides a new rhythm for the construction site. You walk among them, checking the size of the broken pieces. Too large and they won't compact properly. Too small and they belong in the next layer up. Once a sufficient amount of this aggregate is prepared, the mixing begins. Another team of men shovels the broken material into a wide, shallow pit lined with wooden planks. Then the most important ingredient is added: lime. Huge sacks of lime powder, produced by burning limestone or seashells in a kiln, are brought forward. The lime is a binder, a chemical agent that will react with water and harden, locking the aggregate together. This use of lime mortar and concrete is one of the great technological achievements of the Roman world, a well-known fact that allowed them to build everything from the Colosseum to the aqueducts. Here on the frontier, it's being used to create a road that is, in effect, a single, continuous slab of artificial rock. The men mix the dry components with heavy, long-handled hose, raising a choking cloud of white dust. Then water is added, and the strenuous process of wet mixing begins. The legionaries, their legs covered in the gray slurry, wade into the pit, turning the mixture over and over until it reaches the consistency of thick, lumpy porridge. It's messy, exhausting work. Finally, the mixture is ready. Baskets are filled with the wet, heavy rudis and carried to the trench, where they are dumped on top of the stamen. Now, the real art of this layer begins. The wet mixture is spread out evenly with rakes and shovels, forming a layer about 9 inches thick. And then comes the tamping. Oh, the tamping. Heavy, flat-bottomed wooden rammers, sometimes shod with iron, are brought out. Teams of men stand on the freshly laid layer and begin to pound it, over and over, with a steady hypnotic rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. This compacts the mixture, forcing out air bubbles and ensuring that the aggregate is pressed down into every crevice of the stone foundation below. The lime mortar is worked up to the surface, creating a smooth, sealed top. The process is incredibly labor-intensive. A quirky fringe theory you once heard from a senior engineer is that the specific rhythm of the tamping could tell a supervisor how tired the crew was, the beat slowing down as the day wore on. You walk along the freshly tamped sections. The surface is still damp, a uniform, gritty gray. It's much smoother than the layer below, but still coarse to the touch. When it cures, it will be incredibly hard and dense. Historians and archaeologists still debate the exact recipes for these concrete layers. The formulas likely varied significantly based on the local available materials and the specific purpose of the road. Some samples of Roman road concrete have been found to contain surprising ingredients like volcanic ash or pozzolana, which creates a famously strong and even water-resistant concrete, or even animal blood, which was thought to improve its plasticity. Here in Germania, without local volcanoes, your mixture is simpler, just gravel, broken pottery, and lime. You press your thumb into the surface of a freshly tamped section. It barely leaves a mark. The mixture is already beginning to set. This layer, the rudus, serves multiple purposes. It provides a level surface for the next layer. It helps to distribute the load from traffic evenly across the foundation, and its sheer density makes it largely impermeable to water. It is the tough, resilient heart of the road. You look down the line at the hundreds of men working under the hot sun, the breakers, the mixers, the carriers, the tampers. Each one is a small cog in a vast machine, a machine designed to produce one thing, a perfect, permanent road. The dust, the sweat, and the endless thumping of the rammers are the sounds of civilization being hammered into the wilderness. The rudus layer has cured into a solid, unyielding slab of coarse concrete, a gray, gritty platform baking under the sun. It feels as hard as natural stone under the sole of your sandal. The road is now truly taking shape, its profile rising from the trench. The sounds of heavy tamping and the grating of gravel have subsided, replaced by the softer, more refined sounds of sand being sifted and the wet slosh of fine cement being mixed. It's time for the third layer, the dense and durable core of the road known as the nucleus. The name itself, nucleus, means kernel or core, and that perfectly describes its function. This layer is the final bedding for the paving stones, the last chance to create a perfectly smooth, level, and stable surface. The materials for the nucleus are finer and more carefully selected than those for the rudus. Instead of coarse gravel and broken pottery, the aggregate here is sand, fine gravel, and powdered ceramics. Legionaries are put to work with large mesh screens, sifting the sand to remove any pebbles or debris. Other crews take shards of pottery and brick and grind them down into a fine reddish powder using heavy stone wheels. This brick dust is a key ingredient, a well-known historical fact that it acted much like the famous volcanic ash pozzolana, improving the chemical reaction of the lime and making the resulting concrete stronger and more water-resistant. The mixing process is similar to the previous layer but far more precise. The proportions of fine sand, powdered brick, and high-quality lime are carefully measured out under the watchful eye of Vettius. He's like an alchemist, obsessing over the exact quantities, testing the texture of the dry mix between his thumb and forefinger. This is not just construction, it's a science. The mixture is made in smaller batches, as it needs to be applied with more care and precision than the rough rudus. When the water is added, the resulting slurry is not a lumpy porridge, but a thick, smooth paste, the color of wet cement, with a faint reddish hue from the brick dust. Your job is to oversee the application of this concrete nucleus. The wet mixture is brought in buckets, not baskets, and poured onto the surface of the cured rudis. Men with long wooden floats, like oversized trowels, immediately get to work spreading it. The goal is to create a layer about a foot thick, but more importantly, it must be perfectly smooth and, crucially, perfectly cambered. This is where the true genius of Roman road design becomes visible. The surface of the nucleus is not flat. The workers use long, curved wooden screeds to shape the wet concrete, creating a distinct, gentle arch that rises from the edges to the center. The center of the road will be several inches higher than its sides. This convex shape, known as an agger, is the road's primary defense against its greatest enemy, rainwater. Any rain that falls on the finished road will not be able to pool. It will immediately run off to the sides, where it will be collected by the drainage ditches. It's a simple, brilliant, and incredibly effective design. You use a chorobates, that long water level you first saw in the engineer's workshop, to constantly check the angle of the slope. You lay it across the wet nucleus, watching the water in its central groove. A slight tilt in the water tells you the slope is correct. If it's perfectly level, you have them add more mixture to the center. If it's too steep, they scrape some away. It is painstaking, exacting work. This requires a level of finesse that the previous layers did not. The men with the floats move backwards slowly, their bodies bent, their eyes fixed on the surface, smoothing, shaping, and perfecting the curve. A quirky and sometimes debated aspect of this layer is what other materials might have been included. Some archaeological digs have found traces of scrap iron, bits of metal slag from forges, or even shards of glass within the nucleus. Historians argue whether this was intentional, adding extra strength, or simply a convenient way to dispose of camp waste. Given the Romans' obsessive pragmatism, it was likely both. Why waste good, hard material? If it could be buried in concrete and make the road a fraction of a percent stronger, all the better. As a section of the nucleus is finished and floated smooth, it takes on a beautiful, uniform appearance. It's a vast, curving expanse of reddish-gray cement, glistening wetly in the sun. It has to be left to cure slowly. To prevent it from drying too fast and cracking, legionaries cover the fresh surface with damp cloths and animal hides, which they keep moist for several days. It's a delicate phase. A sudden downpour could ruin the smooth surface. A herd of deer wandering across it at night could leave tracks that would be literally set in stone. Sentries are posted not just to watch for hostile tribes, but also to watch for stray animals. You can just imagine the tongue-lashing a sentry would get from Vettius if a wild boar managed to trot down a freshly laid section of nucleus. The thought is mildly amusing. You stand back and admire the work. The straight line you helped survey with smoke and poles is now a tangible, three-dimensional object. It has a foundation of stone, a heart of coarse concrete, and now this smooth, curved core. It is almost a road. All that remains is to give it a skin. The nucleus has cured to a rock-hard, perfectly cambered surface. Walking on it feels like walking on a modern sidewalk, a smooth, man-made convexity that feels alien in the middle of this vast German forest. The air is no longer filled with the dust of lime or the grit of sand. Instead, a new sound dominates the worksite. The sharp, rhythmic chink, chink, chink of hammer on chisel. the final, glorious, and most iconic stage of the road's construction has begun. It is time to lay the skin, the summa crusta, the uppermost crust of paving stones. This is the part of the road that everyone will see. It must be durable, perfectly fitted, and visually impressive. It is a statement of Roman power and permanence. The materials for this layer are the best the region has to offer. While the inner layers made use of rough fieldstone and broken rubble, the summa crusta requires high-quality paving stones, or pavimenta. For weeks, specialized quarrying teams have been searching for outcrops of hard, dense rock like basalt, granite, or flint. Once located, these stones were not just broken up, they were expertly cut into polygonal blocks, typically with flat tops and bottoms and tapered sides like a wedge. Cartload after cartload of these dark gray paving stones arrive and are stacked neatly along the road's edge. They are beautiful objects in their own right, heavy and cool to the touch, their surfaces showing the marks of the quarryman's tools. Now, a new type of specialist arrives on site, the master pavers. These are not ordinary legionaries. They are career artisans, men who have spent their lives fitting stones together. They work with an almost reverential quietness and concentration. Their tools are simple, heavy mallets, iron crowbars for leverage, and a collection of sharp chisels for fine adjustments. You are tasked with supervising the supply of stones to the pavers, ensuring they have the right shapes and sizes as they need them. The process is like assembling the world's largest, heaviest, and most important jigsaw puzzle. The pavers work from the center of the road outwards, starting at the highest point of the camber. A thin layer of fresh, wet mortar or sand is spread on top of the cured nucleus, to act as a final bedding course. Then a master paver selects a stone. He examines it from all angles, turns it over in his hands, and then places it into the mortar bed. He nudges it, taps it with his mallet, and then selects the next stone that will fit snugly against the first. The goal is to fit the polygonal stones together so tightly that you can't slip a knife blade between them. This is a well-known feature of Roman roads. The joints were incredibly fine. This wasn't just for aesthetics. The tight fit prevented water from seeping down into the lower layers, and, just as importantly, prevented weeds from growing up through the road. It also distributed the weight of traffic, as each stone was braced by its neighbors, locking them all into a single, immensely strong surface. The pavers work with a fluid, practiced grace, creating a mosaic of gray stone that slowly spreads across the road. As you watch them, you marvel at their skill. They seem to have an intuitive sense of which stone will fit where. A quirky fringe tidbit you've heard is that some master pavers would develop their own unique, almost imperceptible signature in the patterns they laid, a subtle arrangement of stones that only another expert would recognize. Historians still debate whether the stones were laid in a completely random pattern or if there were deliberate, repeating arrangements designed to increase structural integrity, much like the patterns in modern bricklaying. Looking at the work, it seems to be a mix of both, an organic puzzle-like fit, but one guided by a deep, unspoken understanding of force and geometry. Occasionally, a stone just won't fit. The paver will mark it with a piece of charcoal, and a stone cutter sitting nearby will take it, and with a few deft taps of his chisel, He will shave off a corner or flatten a bulge until it fits perfectly. The chink, chink, chink of the chisels is the sound of perfection being achieved, one stone at a time. The work is slow, much slower than any of the previous stages. A team of a dozen pavers might only complete 100 feet of road in a day, but the result is breathtaking. You kneel down and run your hand over a finished section. The stones are not perfectly flat like modern asphalt, but they form a slightly uneven, textured surface that would provide excellent grip for hobnailed sandals and shod hooves. The tops of the stones are worn smooth, but the overall impression is one of immense, rugged strength. This is a surface built to withstand the marching of entire legions, the iron-rimmed wheels of 10,000 supply wagons, and the relentless passage of centuries. You look back at the gray ribbon of stone unspooling behind the pavers, and then forward at the unfinished nucleus waiting to be covered. You are paving the empire, one stone at a time, creating a permanent line on the map that will guide travelers, merchants, and armies long after the eagle standards of your legion have marched on to conquer new frontiers. The beautiful, rugged skin of the summa crusta is now firmly in place for a long stretch of the road. The main structure is essentially complete. It's a magnificent sight, a wide, cambered highway of perfectly fitted gray stone cutting through the green wilderness. But a Roman road is more than just its paved surface. Like a fine piece of sculpture, it needs to be finished, framed, and given its final, defining details. The last major construction phase begins now, adding the curbs and digging the all-important drainage ditches. Your focus shifts from the center of the road to its edges. The same obsessive attention to detail that went into the layers and paving is now applied to these finishing touches. First come the curbs, or umbones. These are not the small, neat concrete curbs that you might see on a modern street. These are massive, upright stones, almost like small menhirs, set firmly into the ground along the entire length of the paved surface. A special detachment of legionaries, the strongest lifters, is tasked with this job. They use levers, rollers, and sheer brute force to maneuver the heavy curbstones into place. Each stone is set into a deep socket dug into the road's foundation, then packed around with earth and gravel, making it an integral part of the structure. These curbs serve several purposes. The most obvious is to hold the paving stones in place, preventing them from shifting or spreading outwards under the pressure of heavy traffic. They are the bookends that keep the whole library of stones from falling over. This is a mainstream historical fact about their construction. They also clearly demarcated the edge of the road, which would be especially useful in snow or low light. And on a more subtle level, they added to the road's imposing, monumental feel. They framed the Via Militaris, making it look even more solid and permanent. You walk along the line as the men heave another massive curbstone into its place with a great coordinated grunt. The stone settles with a deep thud that you feel in the soles of your sandals. Vedius is there, of course, checking the alignment with a long cord stretched taut between two poles. The line of curbs must be as perfectly straight as the road itself. There is no close enough in his world. While the curbs are being set on one side, another, much larger crew gets to work on the final and perhaps most vital component of the entire system, the drainage ditches, or fossae. You recall how every layer of the road was designed with water in mind: the statumen, the impermeable rudis, the cambered summa crusta. All of that was designed to get water off the road. The ditches are designed to get the water away from the road. Located several feet out from the curbs on both sides, these are not gentle swales. They are deep, V-shaped trenches, often 3 or 4 feet deep and up to 10 feet wide. They are in effect 2 smaller roads of dirt running parallel to the main one. The digging is hard work, but by now the legionaries are masters of excavation. They work in their usual efficient teams, cutting through the soil and clay, piling the excavated earth on the far side of the ditch to create an additional embankment or agger. This entire system, curb, a flat walkway or margin, ditch, and embankment, created a massive linear earthwork that was as much a defensive feature as it was a piece of infrastructure. The complete road from the top of the outer embankment on one side to the other could be over 100 feet wide. It was a formidable obstacle for any enemy force to cross. A quirky detail that is often overlooked is the maintenance of these ditches. A ditch is only as good as it is clear. Centurions would regularly inspect the foci along their patrol routes. Any section found to be clogged with silt, leaves, or debris would need to be cleared immediately. Squads of soldiers would be assigned ditch duty, much as they would be assigned guard duty. It was a constant, unglamorous, but absolutely essential task to preserve the life of the road. Historians still argue about the exact legal responsibility for this maintenance, whether it fell entirely to the military or if local communities were conscripted to help maintain the sections that passed through their lands. You stand in the middle of the paved surface and look at the whole cross-section coming together. The high, cambered center, the tightly fitted paving stones, the massive curbs, the flat walkway, and the deep, imposing ditches. It is a complete, integrated system, a machine for moving legions and shedding water. The logic of it is beautiful in its brutal simplicity. Every single element has a clear and practical purpose. There is no decoration for decoration's sake. It is pure, unadorned function, and in that it achieves a kind of austere beauty. The road has ceased to be a construction project. It has become a feature of the landscape, a permanent alteration of the world, as solid and as real as the hills it crosses and the forests it cuts through. The road itself is finished. A long 20-mile stretch of gray stone, flanked by curbs and deep ditches, now lies like a spear shaft aimed at the heart of Germania. The legionaries, who for months have been quarrymen, lumberjacks, diggers, and pavers, can finally return to being soldiers. But there is one final monumental task to complete. A Roman road was not just a physical path. It was a measured, quantified, and controlled piece of imperial infrastructure. It needed to be marked. It needed a voice. It needed a milestone. A truly colossal cylinder of red sandstone, taller than a man and as wide as a large barrel, is hauled to the worksite on a massive, specially built wagon pulled by a team of 16 straining oxen. This stone has been quarried and shaped miles away and transported here with immense difficulty. This is the miliarium, the milestone. It is to be erected at the very first Roman mile marker outside the fortress of Mogontiacum. A deep, perfectly circular hole has already been dug for its base, reinforced with its own miniature foundation of packed stone and lime mortar. Your task today is simple but nerve-wracking. You are part of the engineering team responsible for safely erecting this 2-ton behemoth. A complex system of ropes, pulleys, and wooden scaffolding has been constructed around the hole. The legionaries have swapped their shovels for thick hemp ropes. The mood is tense and focused. If this stone falls, it could shatter, wasting months of work. Worse, it could crush someone. Vettius is in charge, his commands sharp and clear, cutting through the nervous silence. With a series of grunted orders, he directs the men on the ropes. Slowly, painstakingly, the huge stone cylinder is tilted upwards. The ropes groan in protest, the wooden scaffolding creaks, and the oxen, now unharnessed, snort nervously. You watch, holding your breath, as the massive stone rises, a slow-motion testament to the power of leverage and teamwork. For a moment it hangs, suspended, perfectly vertical, swaying slightly. Then, with a final set of commands, Vettius has the men ease it down. The base of the milestone slides perfectly into its socket with a deep, satisfying thump that echoes down the road. It is upright. It is in place. A collective sigh of relief ripples through the assembled men. Now the stone carver, a quiet, meticulous specialist from Syria, approaches the milestone. He has been waiting for this moment. He gently runs his hand over the smooth, dressed surface of the stone. Unfurling a piece of papyrus, he begins to trace the inscription onto the stone with a piece of charcoal. This is the most famous and historically significant feature of the milestones. They weren't just simple distance markers. They were imperial billboards. The inscription, which the carver will now spend the next several days painstakingly chipping into the rock, will state the name of the reigning emperor, Trajan, in all his glory. Imperator Caesar, Nerva Traianus Augustus Germanicus Dacicus, Pontifex Maximus, and so on. It will also state the distance, Milium I, 1 mile, and often the name of the governor who oversaw the road's construction. You watch the carver make his first tentative taps with his chisel. Each letter is a declaration of ownership. This road, this land, belongs to the emperor. Every traveler who passes this stone will be reminded of who is in charge. Historians absolutely adore milestones. They are invaluable primary sources, providing precise dates for road construction and helping to reconstruct the careers of Roman governors. A quirky detail is that sometimes, when a new emperor came to power, especially one who had overthrown his predecessor, work crews would be sent out to erase the old emperor's name from the milestones and carve in the new one, a practice known as damnatio memoriae. Some milestones have been found with multiple crisscrossing inscriptions, a silent stony record of bloody imperial politics. There's an ongoing scholarly debate about whether the distances on milestones were measured from the center of the nearest city, from its main gate, or from a specific monument within it. In Rome itself, all distances were measured from the golden milestone, the Miliarium Arium, in the Forum. Out here on the frontier, it's most likely measured from the main gate of your fortress. As the carver works, you step back and look at the milestone from a distance. It is an object of stark, imposing authority. It doesn't ask for attention, it commands it. It transforms the road from mere a path into a precisely calibrated instrument of the Roman state. It says, "This is not a wild track. This is the empire. You are 1 mile from its fortress. You are under its laws. You are under its protection or its wrath." The milestone gives the road a purpose that transcends mere travel. It makes it a part of a vast, interconnected network that stretches from the misty forests of Germania to the hot sands of Egypt. A network held together by stone, law, and the ever-present, ever-watchful authority of the emperor, whose name is now being carved, letter by painstaking letter, into this towering piece of sandstone. The milestone stands proud and permanent, its fresh inscription gleaming in the low afternoon sun. The main construction is over. The great flurry of activity, the hundreds of men, the creaking of carts, the endless noise of axes, shovels, and hammers has moved on, pushing the road ever deeper into the wilderness. You, however, have been assigned to remain with the rear detachment. Your new base is the small, fortified work camp that was built at the start of the project, now serving as a supply depot and security outpost for the long road behind the main construction crew. Life, for the first time in months, slows down. The evenings are the strangest. You have grown accustomed to the noise and bustle of a massive work crew, the constant energy of 1,000 men working towards a single goal. Now the camp is home to just your sentry of legionaries, a few clerks, and a handful of other junior officers. The silence that descends after sunset is profound, broken only by the chirping of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, and the low murmur of the sentries calling to each other along the camp's wooden palisade. You are no longer actively building. You are now living alongside what you have built. Your daily routine becomes one of maintenance and patrol. But it is the nightly rhythm of the camp that truly defines your existence. As dusk settles, the cook fires are lit. The main meal of the day, the cena, is served. And every single night it is the same. A thick stew of lentils and beans, sometimes with a bit of salted pork or smoked fish thrown in for flavor, accompanied by a piece of hard, dense legionary bread called panis militaris. It's nutritious, it's filling, and it is profoundly, soul-crushingly boring. You find yourself fantasizing about the taste of an apple or a fresh piece of cheese. The Roman army's logistical genius is a well-known historical fact. Their ability to supply tens of thousands of men with a standardized, high-energy diet was key to their success, but that genius did not extend to culinary variety. After the meal, the men gather around the fires. There is no grand entertainment. They gamble with dice made from bone or wood, a practice that was officially forbidden but universally ignored by the centurions. They mend their gear, sharpening a dagger, oiling the leather straps of their sandals, stitching a tear in a woolen cloak. They tell stories, their voices low and soft in the firelight. They talk of home, of small farms in Italy, or olive groves in Spain. They talk about past campaigns, of strange sights in distant lands like Egypt or Judea. They rarely speak of the future. A soldier's future is always uncertain. A quirky, and very human detail of camp life was the importance of mail. Letters from home, carried by the Imperial Postal Service, the cursus publicus, were a lifeline. They would be read and reread until the papyrus grew soft and frayed. Men who couldn't read would pay a clerk a small fee to read their letters to them and write a reply. You see a tough, battle-scarred legionary, a man who wouldn't flinch at a charging barbarian, weeping silently by the fire as he listens to a letter from his wife, read to him by a clerk half his age. As the fires burn down to embers, the camp prepares for the night. The first watch takes its position on the ramparts. This is a time of high alert. The local tribes, while avoiding open confrontation with the main force, were known to harass smaller, isolated outposts like this one. A night attack was a constant threat. You are assigned a shift on the watch from midnight until the third hour. You stand on the wooden platform overlooking the vast, silent forest, your spear in hand. The road you helped build gleams faintly in the moonlight, a pale, ghostly ribbon stretching into the darkness. The night is long and cold. Your mind plays tricks on you. Every gust of wind in the trees sounds like a footstep. Every shadow seems to hold a crouching warrior. Historians still debate the psychological toll that constant low-level stress took on the soldiers stationed on these remote frontiers. It was a war of nerves, as much as a war of swords and spears. To stay awake, you count the stars. You recite lines from Virgil you learned as a boy. You think about the geometry of the road. You think about how strange it is to be here, a tiny spark of Roman order in an immense and indifferent wilderness. You are a guardian of a straight line, a sentry for a work of engineering. Your only job is to ensure that the sun rises on a camp that has not been overrun, and on a road that is still waiting, silent and empty, for the tramp of the legions it was built to carry. The horn marking the end of your watch is the sweetest sound you have ever heard. Weeks drift by in the quiet routine of patrol and maintenance. The main construction crew has pushed so far ahead that their noise no longer reaches you, even on the wind. The road has settled into the landscape, and your small camp has become a permanent feature beside it. Then one morning, a courier arrives not from the front, but from the rear, from the fortress at Mogontiacum. He brings new orders from Drusus. Your detachment is not being recalled. Instead, your mission is expanding. You are to construct a muncio. A muncio was an official stopping place, a kind of government-run hotel or way station built at regular intervals along major Roman roads. They were essential for the functioning of the cursus publicus, the imperial postal and transport system. This network is a well-known historical fact, a state-run service that moved official mail, tax revenues, and high-ranking officials across the empire with incredible speed and efficiency. A muncio, typically located every 15 to 20 miles, was a place where a traveling courier could get a fresh horse, a hot meal, and a secure place to sleep for the night. Building one here is a sign that this new road is already being fully integrated into the imperial network. It is no longer just a raw military spearhead, it's becoming a permanent artery of the state. Your role as a surveyor and engineer is once again called upon. You are tasked with laying out the footprint of the new building complex. This isn't a temporary wooden camp, it's a permanent stone structure. You use your groma and disempida, the tools that feel like old friends by now, to mark out the foundations for a small, functional, and highly defensible compound. The design is standard, a rectangular building with an inner courtyard, stables for the horses, a small bathhouse, a kitchen, and a few Spartan rooms for travelers. The whole thing will be surrounded by its own stone wall, a miniature fortress. The legionaries who had been growing restless with the monotony of guard duty seemed to relish the return to construction. A new quarry is opened to source the building stone. Trees are felled not to clear a path, but to be sawed into beams and roof trusses. A kiln is built to fire bricks and roof tiles. Your small, sleepy outpost is once again a bustling work site, but the energy is different this time. You are not imposing a line on the landscape, you are raising a structure from it. You oversee the digging of the foundations, a task that feels comfortably familiar. Then the masons get to work, laying course after course of rough-hewn stone, bound together with the same strong lime mortar you used on the road. You spend your days checking angles, ensuring walls are plumb, and calculating the spans for the roof beams. It's a different kind of engineering, more vertical, more intricate. You are no longer thinking in straight lines and gentle cambers, but in right angles, load-bearing walls, and the complex geometry of a tiled roof. A quirky detail of these mancios is that they often became the nucleus for future civilian settlements. A small village, or vicus, would spring up around the way station. Unofficial merchants, blacksmiths, innkeepers, and retired soldiers would set up shop, catering to the travelers and the mancio staff. Historians and archaeologists can often trace the origins of many modern European towns back to these humble Roman way stations. You can almost see it happening. A local tribesman, seeing the regular flow of traffic, might set up a stall to trade furs for Roman wine. A legionary, retiring after his 25 years of service, might be granted a plot of land nearby and open a tavern. Your small, functional stone building could be the seed of a future city. There is a scholarly debate about the level of comfort these mancios provided. While they were certainly a welcome refuge for official travelers, they were not luxury hotels. The rooms would have been small, probably smoky from the braziers used for heating, with simple rope beds. The food would have been the same functional fare as the army's. However, the presence of a bathhouse, even a small one, was a significant luxury. The ability to soak in a hot bath after a long, hard day on the road was a profoundly Roman comfort, a small piece of the city brought to the edge of the wilderness. You supervised the construction of the hypocaust system for the bathhouse, a clever underfloor heating system where hot air from a furnace circulates through channels beneath the floor, heating the tiles from below. It's a complex piece of work, a miniature version of the great public baths in Rome. As you watch the masons carefully build the small brick pillars that will support the floor, you feel a deep sense of satisfaction. You are not just building a shelter, you are building a piece of civilization. The road allows for rapid movement. The milestone proclaims ownership. But the mancio, with its hot bath and secure walls, offers something more personal, a moment of peace, a place for a weary Roman official to wash off the dust of the barbarian world and feel, for a moment, that he is home. The mancio is complete. Its stone walls are solid, its red-tiled roof is a splash of civilized color against the green forest, and a thin tendril of smoke rises from its kitchen chimney. It looks sturdy, permanent, and reassuringly Roman. Your detachment has finished its work. New orders have come. You are to march back to the main fortress at Mogontiacum. The long project is over. As you and your century of men assemble on the road for the return journey, a strange sense of quiet pride settles over you. You are about to become the first people to officially travel the full length of the road you helped build. The march is unlike any you have experienced before. For months, you have trudged through mud, scrambled over hills, and hacked your way through dense undergrowth. Now you are walking on the smooth, hard surface. Your pace is fast and rhythmic, your hobnailed sandals striking the paving stones with a steady, reassuring crunch. You march in perfect column, two abreast, the sound of 80 pairs of feet hitting the stone in unison. It is the sound of order, the sound of the legion. You are not fighting the landscape anymore, you are gliding over it. The journey that took you weeks of painstaking surveying now takes only a few days of easy marching. You pass the places that were once major obstacles, the steep hill you had to sight over, the swampy area that required the deepest foundations, and now they are nothing. The road conquers them, taming the terrain with its relentless, gentle gradient. You are experiencing firsthand the primary purpose of this incredible feat of engineering. You are moving with the speed and efficiency of the Roman army. On the morning of the second day, a sentry from one of the small watchtowers that have been built along the road signals that a large column is approaching from the direction of the fortress. You halt your small detachment and move to the side of the road. Soon you hear it. It begins as a low, distant rumble, a vibration you feel in the soles of your feet through the stone of the road. The sound grows steadily, resolving itself into the familiar, formidable tramp of thousands of marching men. Then they appear. Cresting a low rise in the road is the eagle standard of the 22nd Legion, the Aquila, gleaming in the sun. Behind it, stretching back as far as the eye can see, is the entire first cohort of the Legion in full marching gear. 6 centuries of men, nearly 500 strong, marching with the flawless discipline that conquered the known world. Their red shields are strapped to their backs, their helmets gleam, and their chainmail shirts clink with a sound like a river of steel. They are marching out, using your road for the first time, likely to garrison a new fort at the road's northern end. You and your men stand at attention by the curb as they pass. Their centurions salute your officer, a sign of respect for the engineers who paved their way. You watch them, mesmerized. The road, which has been so silent and empty, is now fulfilling its ultimate purpose. It has come alive. This is the well-known image of Roman power, the legion on the march. And you realize that the road is as much a part of their power as their swords or their discipline. It is the platform that allows them to project that power deep into hostile territory, to respond to threats with unmatched speed, and to supply their forts indefinitely. The road is a weapon, and you help to build it. You look at the faces of the marching legionaries. They are young, old, weathered, determined. They are the lifeblood of the empire, and the road is its veins. A quirky, often unappreciated fact is the sheer weight a single legionary carried on the march. Besides his armor and weapons, he carried his own entrenching tools, a shovel or pickaxe, 2 wooden stakes for building the nightly camp palisade, a cooking pot, and several days' worth of grain, a total load of 60 pounds or more. The smooth, hard surface of the road made carrying such a burden immeasurably easier than struggling through a muddy forest track. As the last of the cohort marches past, the sound of their footsteps slowly fades, leaving a profound silence in its wake. Historians still debate the true long-term impact of the road network. Was it a tool of cultural integration, spreading Roman language and customs, or was it primarily a tool of military occupation and resource extraction? Standing here, having watched that river of steel flow past, you suspect it was both. The road brought the legion, but in the legion's wake would come the merchants, the administrators, the tax collectors, and the settlers. The road didn't just carry armies, it carried the entire machinery of an empire. You give the order for your own small detachment to resume its march. Your footsteps seem quieter now, less significant. You are no longer the builders, the creators. You are just travelers now, users of the great machine you have brought into being. You walk in the fresh footprints of the legion, following the straight path you helped to carve, a path that now leads, for the first time, both away from and back to the heart of Rome. Your return to the fortress at Mogontiacum is uneventful. The great stone walls of the fortress, which once seemed like the edge of the world, now feel like the center of it. You are debriefed by a stone-faced Drusus, who listens to your report, inspects your survey charts, and dismisses you with a curt, almost imperceptible nod of approval. For your efforts, you are promoted, given a small bonus in silver denarii, and reassigned to a new, much less interesting project, reinforcing the latrine walls on the west side of the fort. Your great adventure is over. Life returns to the mundane rhythm of garrison duty. But something has changed in you. In the quiet moments, in the dead of night when you are on watch, you find your thoughts drifting back to the road. You picture it in your mind, a perfect, unwavering line stretching out into the green darkness. You think of the layers, the unseen foundation of packed stone, the solid heart of concrete, the smooth, cambered skin of the paving stones. You built something that will last. Your life as a soldier is ephemeral. You could be killed in the next skirmish, or die of a fever, or simply grow old and fade away. But the road will remain. You begin to see the world differently, as a series of engineering problems. You look at a muddy track and instinctively think about drainage. You see a rickety wooden bridge and mentally redesign it with stone arches. The road has imprinted its logic onto your mind. The world is a chaotic, messy, irrational place, but it can be tamed. It can be straightened. It can be paved. This transformation, the creation of an engineering mindset, is a well-known historical phenomenon that was one of Rome's greatest cultural exports. They didn't just export their laws and their language, they exported their way of looking at and physically ordering the world. As years turn into decades, you grow older, you rise through the ranks, your hair turns gray, and your face acquires the leathery, creased look of a veteran. You serve in other provinces, build other smaller things, fortifications, aqueducts, storehouses, but you never forget your first great project. Sometimes on a map, you trace its path with your finger. You hear reports from the north. The road has done its job. The Chatti tribe has been subdued, the frontier pushed back. Forts and then towns have sprung up along its length. The Moncio you built is now the center of a bustling little market town named Vicus Matasonis. Your road has become a part of the permanent furniture of the world. A quirky detail that modern archaeology has revealed is just how profoundly these roads altered the landscape. By creating a massive, well-drained ridge, they changed local water tables. By clearing a wide corridor, they created a new kind of edge habitat for certain plants and animals. They were ecological engineering as much as civil engineering. Even after the empire fell and the stones were scavenged for other buildings, the raised earthwork of the agger often remained, a ghostly line still visible in the fields, a feature that local people would call a devil's causeway or a giant's path. Historians, of course, continued to debate the ultimate legacy of the Roman Empire itself, whether its order was worth its brutality, its peace worth its oppression. But there is less debate about the roads. They are the empire's most unambiguous achievement. They connected people, they enabled trade, they spread ideas, and they endured. They were the skeleton of a civilization, and even when the flesh of that civilization withered away, the bones remained. You are an old man now, retired from the army, living in a small villa not far from where your journey began. One day you walk out to the great road, your road. You stand on the paving stones, which are now worn smooth by the passage of millions of feet and countless iron-rimmed wheels. A merchant's wagon rumbles past, loaded with amber from the distant north, traveling down to the heart of the empire. A group of children are playing in the drainage ditch. The road is no longer a military weapon. It is just the way things are. It is the path from here to there. It has become so integrated into the fabric of life that no one even thinks about it. You reach down and touch one of the paving stones, feeling its familiar, rugged texture. You were here. You helped draw this line. You placed these stones. Your work will outlast you, outlast your children's children, outlast the memory of the emperor whose name is now fading from the milestone just down the way. You built a piece of forever. And as the sun sets, casting a long shadow down the perfectly straight line you drew across the world, you feel a deep, quiet sense of peace. And so your journey as a Roman engineer comes to a gentle close. The echoes of the legion's march have faded into the soft hum of history. The clang of the hammer on stone now just a quiet memory. The road you so carefully built is now sinking slowly into the landscape, its purpose served, its form becoming one with the earth it once conquered. All that hard work, all that sweat and precision has now dissolved into the peaceful stillness of the past, a long straight path for your mind to wander down as you drift deeper into sleep. The tension of the frontier has eased, the vigilance of the sentry has been relaxed, and the great monumental effort has finally found its rest. Let the silence of the ancient forest reclaim the scene, and let the gentle, steady presence of that enduring stone road be a comforting, solid thought to hold as you let go of the day. There is nothing more to build tonight, nothing more to measure. There is only the soft, quiet darkness and the feeling of a job well done, a legacy set in stone, now sleeping peacefully under the weight of 2,000 quiet years.